Well, good evening, everyone. This is Rebecca Schroeder with the CDH Foundation. Just wanted to thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to be here chatting with Taylor Steffensmeier. She is a CDH survivor and a mom of two, and she's also an ECMO survivor. So we're going to be talking to her tonight about her life and her experience with CDH. So welcome, Taylor.
I'm 32 years old. I'm an LCDH survivor. I was born undiagnosed CDH. My mom only had ultrasounds with me because I'm the baby of the family, and they never picked it up. I was born in a rural hospital, so very little any equipment for specialty. I came out blue, squeaked, so they obviously knew something was wrong. Immediately, they intubated me, and I had to go 2 hours to Children's Hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. So it's of course foggy that day. My mom said they had to take me via ambulance, and the ventilator wasn't working in the ambulance. So they begged me all the way to Omaha. That's where they diagnosed me with CDH. I was put on ECMO less than 24 hours old. So my mom said that night they got a call. I was born at like 10 a.m. That night they got a call and said it's either we put her on ECMO or there's no other option. There's only one ECMO machine in Nebraska at the time, and thank God nobody was on it, so I was able to go on it. Put me on that for 5 days. At day 5, I had my first hernia repair while on ECMO, and then at day 7, they were able to take me off ECMO. At 1 month of age, I graduated and came home with no feeding tube, no oxygen, nothing. Wow. So it was a big feat. I had 4 surgeries by the time I was 3. So I re-herniated several times in that short period of time. One, I know I had RSV, so they knew I was sick, discovered I herniated at the same time. So other times I do not know what my symptoms were. I don't know how they discovered any of them. I'm guessing just routine x-rays. My mom says she kind of blinks all that stuff out because she doesn't want to remember it. She also always said that, like, even when I went on ECMO, she didn't believe I was going to die. Like, even the doctors, when they told her, the only time she thought I was going to die is when she loaded me up in the life net with RSV. She's like, that's the only time I really thought I was going to lose you. So she had strong faith the whole time. I lived a normal childhood. I'm the youngest of 3 girls, so my parents treated me like my sisters. We played softball, we rode bikes. Like, there was no limits to what I was able to do. At the age of 7, I had finger swelling, and just doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. They thought I was low in iron. So I was taking the nasty iron tablets and all that stuff. And I don't know what made them decide to do a chest x-ray, but they did, and discovered I re-herniated again. So that was my 5th time of re-herniating. When they did that repair, I ended up having to have a bowel resection too, because I had a perked bowel from floating up and down. So I had all that taken care of. I know I had surgery around Easter that year because I was a 1st grader, and I was super mad because I almost missed the Easter party at school. But I remember by the end of the school year, I was running the mile run in PE. So my parents just never put limits on it. My doctor never did. My doctor always said, that's the only way you get better is if you keep pushing yourself. So that's what I did, I guess. And that's what my parents did. They never treated me any different. Before I was 7, the scars, my parents always said they were just beautiful wounds that I got because I was sick, and that's how the doctor saved me. So to me, they were no big deal. I know some of my friends always said there was a map to Disney World because I always wanted to go to Disney World. So the scar across my abdomen, it was my map. It never stopped me from wearing swimsuits when I was little, or covering anything up. And then obviously at the age of 7, I finally realized what that scar was, because they went through that scar again. And so then I realized, but it still never stopped me. Like I was never ashamed of it. Um, I played softball. I was big into softball. I did gymnastics for a while. I did dance when I was younger. Um, and then in probably high school is when people started knowing my neck scar the most because it does stand out. I don't even remember it's there half the time. People are like, "What happened?" Like, what do you mean? What happened? Because I forget it's there. Um, so then I did start making up some stories just to get a reaction out of people, I guess. Um, but I was never ashamed. I all through high school I wore a bikini. I would tell people what it was, and nobody really made a big deal. I guess I feel now the older I am, more people notice and ask. But I don't know if it's just because like I have kids, so like their friends are asking them like, "What's wrong with your mom?" But I've never been ashamed of my scars. I've always showed them off. And then high school was great. Went to college. I started at a community college, and my sophomore year, I started getting really sick. Um, I had bronchitis and I could not get rid of it. I went to urgent care twice, kept giving me medicine. I got to the point where if I lay down, I couldn't really breathe at night. When I ate, my whole chest would hurt so bad. I started losing weight because I just didn't eat because it hurt to eat. So, and the breathing was hard. I was a CNA at the time, so I worked at a nursing home too. So, like, I was doing heavy lifting and all that stuff. Um, Even some of the nurses there would make comments because we'd go out, of course, for college kids, we'd go out and party and we'd all come back the next day like, "Oh, you look like you're the one who was a partier." And I was always the one that would drive everybody. So I'm like, well, thanks. So obviously I was looking pretty bad and rough. Um, I eventually finally went to my primary doctor after like not being able to shake the bronchitis. And my primary's like, let's go. Well, he was gone. So his PA, which knew my history very well, like really, really aware of it, because he actually had a daughter that needed ECMO when I was born, and I was on the machine. So they had to fly her to Colorado where she did not make it. So it's very heartbreaking, like when I go see him, because like I'm like, the story we know behind him losing his child. Um, but we went over my history and he's like, let's just do a chest x-ray. Let's just see what's going on. And that day I went alone to the doctors. I never go alone to the doctors because my mom was my right hand through it all. But I went alone that day because my mom was working. And him and my primary came in and pulled me into the hallway to look at my x-ray together. That's when I knew something was not right because I stood between two doctors staring at this x-ray. And they pointed at my chest and like, that's your stomach and your chest. So at that point I was just lost, like 20 years old, about ready to graduate, just got accepted into nursing school. My life was falling together, like going great. Like actually met a boy I really like life was going amazing. So went to my parents because I was back home, and my mom met me at the door and I was just bawling. The doctor already called her and talked to her about it. So we did a CT about 2 days later, and my stomach was back in where it's supposed to be. Everything looked great. So he was going to write it off. And he said, "Oh, just take some Tylenol. We'll try to figure out this bronchitis thing. It's fine." So my mom had a gut instinct, like, this is not right. Like, this is not what it's supposed to be. So she got in contact with my CDH doctor who still worked at Children's, and he was willing to take a look at everything. So I went to see him and we did more testing. I spent a whole day at the hospital doing testing because one x-ray image, everything was normal. The next, everything was up in my chest. So he could not figure it out. Finally, he decided I re-herniated. He was 99% sure. So yeah, I had to have surgery that year. We agreed on letting me finish college and getting all my finals done because I refused to miss out on that. I was too close to be graduating and getting into nursing school to let that slide. So I had surgery in May of that year, and I started nursing school that August. That surgery was a major surgery. They took my back muscle that time because the hole was so big, and they laid that down as my diaphragm on my left side because my entire left side was gone. It was the first reverse latissimus dorsal procedure my doctor ever performed. So he was kind of winging it. He admitted that. He had to remove 6 inches of my ninth rib to make it all work and kind of move around my 10th one to have it lay nicely. But he said when he opened me up, my stomach was up to my 7th rib. So they pushed everything back down, put the muscle there. I stayed 5 days in the hospital that time. And then I came home. I stayed with my parents, not wanting to, but I did for about a month. And then I moved back to Norfolk, where I was going to college at. And I went back to working about a day a week, about a month and a half later. So I didn't let it stop me. I kind of let it be my launching pad of like, this is just another hurdle I have to get through. It was rough. Recovery was not fun, but it's all worth it now. I do have chronic pain from that surgery. I have nerve damage around my ribs. And then the muscle area, that all is sore. So, I mean, something I had to learn to deal with, but I did. I managed to graduate nursing school 2 years later. The boy I met when I was sick with bronchitis actually married me even after seeing all that. He even came to the hospital. He passed my mom's test of holding the chest tube and not passing out and taking care of me. So he won everybody over with that. And he didn't run after seeing everything. So, and he knew like that's going to be my life forever. And there's always a chance. And I didn't stop him. So we actually got married a year after I graduated nursing school. And right when we got engaged, we already were talking like, I told him like, I don't know if I can have kids. I don't know what that's looking like for us because of my diaphragm and everything. So he went with me. Usually my mom went with me to my follow-ups with my doctor because I was still doing yearly x-rays with my surgeon. So he went with me 1 year before we got married. And we sat down and talked to him like, what is it looking like? What do you feel like? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, well, let's go for it and try it. Like my doctor was, yeah. I was his oldest survivor and he didn't know what else to say. He was pretty confident in his work and he thought it was holding up. So he was okay with it. So we got married and then I was having fertility issues. So before the doctor would let me go and start taking fertility meds, she's like, let's talk to your surgeon one more time to make sure, like, because the odds of having twins are higher with fertility meds. So I called and talked to him about that. And he's like, well, I don't know. He's like, let's try. He's like, I think you'll be a good mom. I don't think you should let it stop you. So we tried it, and thank goodness it was only one baby we got out of it. So I got pregnant. No OB knew what CDH was. My first one that I was going to, that everybody in Norfolk recommended, was terrible. The second time I went to visit him, I asked him kind of like what the plan is. Am I going to see a specialist? How he felt, and he wrote me off. He said everybody who has CDH is normal and it's okay. You can push, everything will be fine. It's just a normal pregnancy. So I went home crying. And my mom's like, let's switch doctors. So we switched doctors, and my husband and I found one we loved, and she immediately sent us to Omaha to a high-risk doctor, which was Women's Methodist, which is a very well-known, like they treat all the high risk around here. And none of them heard of CDH before. None of them have taken care of a CDH, let alone an ECMO survivor. So they had no clue what to expect, what to do. So they got in contact with my CDH doctor and teamed up with him, and the whole team was on it. So we had like 6 high-risk doctors and my CDH doctor on board. Followed really closely in my pregnancy. I had an echo done when I was about 25 weeks pregnant, just to make sure everything was looking good there, since I was on ECMO at one point. and that was all good. Um, my only problem with my pregnancies were my body just couldn't support me and a baby. So about the whole time, my daughter, when I was pregnant, my first one, she was like in the low percentile the whole time, very tiny. By 30 weeks, we were dropping lower and lower. By 34 weeks, like basically my body was done. We were done producing for baby. They were down to the 4 and 5 percentiles. So I would get induced at that time just because my body was done. Doctor knew my body was done. My pain was high. I was done. Um, but I did work at a hospital. I'm a floor nurse, so I worked up until about 32 weeks with both of my babies. Um, I may have pushed it, but I refused to let anything stop me, and I wanted to continue working so I could be there during maternity leave. So I had both my babies 34 weekers. Both of them were healthy. They were just growers, so we did spend some time in the NICU, which was an eye opener for me. Being a NICU baby, I never realized what it's like to be a parent in the NICU until then. And I would call my mom bawling. It's like, how did you do this? Like, I wasn't healthy. My babies are healthy, and I'm emotionally lost. I was like, I just had to sit here and watch them eat, and you had to sit there and pray I was going to breathe. So I found a huge gratitude towards my parents at that point about how strong they were and how strong they were for me. Um, so that was a big eye opener for me. Um, my kids now ask about my scars all the time. So I always tell them that's why they're here. They're my miracle babies from those scars. So I tell them one day they'll realize how amazing it is that they are miracles of their own. So
That's wonderful. You have an amazing story for sure. That's great. Do you feel like, well, let me just start at the beginning. So your doctor, so your mother, you were undiagnosed. I'm sorry. Your mother
yes, yeah,
they had no idea about it. So was your doctor familiar with CDH originally? Were you his very first patient?
I was his first CDH one. Yes, I don't think he
Yes.
has any other CDH one since.
Okay.
So
That's amazing. I wonder, I'm sure that you've inspired so many people too. I know a lot of families choosing their doctor, it's been very hard for them to decide where to have their child, right? You know, and a
yeah,
lot of people are blessed to be able to relocate. You know, things are a little bit different now for that, but not everybody is given that chance or even has that ability to relocate. So I think it's really great to point out that, you know, you are doing really good, you know,
yeah,
for
I
for
was
your
very
journey.
blessed. Yes.
That's great. That's great. I love that he's just like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see how it's going. Um, do you feel like your diagnosis is what has compelled you to become a nurse? Like what compelled you to go into the
I
medical
do.
field? Yeah.
I mean, I always said I wanted to be a nurse, and then like my mom always like because my mom would tell me NICU stories. I really didn't realize like how sick I was, or like the hospital stays never registered to me until I was at 7, until that one big surgery. Um, but then after that, yeah, I would always be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a nurse when I grow up, and I mean, I always wanted to. As a nurse now, I never realized how big of a difference what a nurse really does. I mean, I don't think you see it until you actually see it. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. When your kids are sick and in the hospital time, you see what a nurse does. You realize all the stuff they do and that they're those primary people that are there. But yeah, I would say that is the big thing. I always said I wanted to be a NICU nurse. I never did get to that dream. I got stuck in a little rural area that doesn't have a NICU. But I'm okay with it. I enjoy what I do.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure you're great at everything that you do, especially given your journey. this was another question that came in. How did your mom share your CDH diagnosis with you? I know you said, when you re-herniated, I think at 5, was that right? You kind of
When
became
I was,
more
yeah, when I was,
familiar,
yeah,
or 7.
um, when I was 7. When I was little, she would tell me about my scars, and she would just be like, "Oh, you were really sick when you were born, so your stomach was in your chest." Um, and then even when I was 7, like the MRIs and all the testing, like she was my rock. Like she never was scared. She never showed the fear of like going through another surgery. And like I just, to me, like she made it look like it was just a routine thing. Like it's all gonna be good. Like we're gonna go to the hospital. They're gonna let me go to sleep. Um, but that's when she really started opening up. And as I got older, she would share more stories and stuff, and the more I asked. But it was just slow steps. I still feel like now she still slowly still sometimes tells me stories. I know like her and my dad always they compare like what they remember, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then they'll share stuff that they remember. My dad does not like talking about it. He is one that wants to shut that side off and not think about it or remember those days.
Mm.
He even has a rule since I was taken 2 hours away and in Omaha. I'm not allowed to be in Omaha on my birthday because he doesn't want to be there with me in Omaha. So he has a rule like we cannot be there because it just brings back too many memories. So
Yeah. I remember someone once told me that in the NICU, the um, the dad sees the machines and the mom sees the baby. And I know in our case, I found that to be very, very true. Um, so I feel that. That's hard. What do you feel like has been your biggest challenge, both emotionally and physically, because of your CDH?
I would say my chronic pain from my last surgery. I got a
Mhm.
lot of limitations from that last one. I used to be a softball player, and since it was left-sided, they took my back muscle on my left side, so
Mhm.
that I can never throw a ball like I used to. Um, just the limitations physically of what I used to be able to do to now. I try not to let a lot of things stop me, but the chronic pain, sometimes there's good days, there's bad days. I don't let people know when I'm at work. If I'm having a rough day, nobody knows I'm in pain. I just keep going. Um, Sadly, my husband has to deal with it when I get home because then I'll be like, oh, I hurt so bad, I can't move. But um, I would say physically, it's the pain, chronic pain. Emotionally, I feel like it was it's still just my launching pad. It honestly is the thing that keeps me pushing,
Mhm.
keeps me fighting more for everything I want to do, everything I want to accomplish, and not to give up on anything. It's kind of been my life lesson to keep me going.
That's great. That's great. Um, Someone had asked, when you have gotten sick in the past or even recently, or maybe even when you were younger, at some point, did you, so I know you said you came home without any support. Have you had to go back on oxygen, or did you notice it took you a little bit longer to get better um, than maybe your
Um,
sisters
I've
or
never,
something?
yeah, I've never had to be on oxygen, bring home oxygen. Um, Sometimes I would feel like the older I get, the harder it is for me to recover from things, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I do notice even like the older I get, my energy, I get fatigued easier. I feel like I don't have the stamina of most people my age. Um,
Mhm.
I kind of feel like that old lady sometimes because I'm always tired and physically it just is exhausting. Um, but oxygen wise, I never had issues with that. Knock on wood, I thankfully don't get sick too often. I get chronic bronchitis once a year, but other than that, it does take me quite some time to recover from that. But otherwise,
Mhm.
I've been pretty good.
If there was one thing that you could share with other CDH moms who are out there, or even survivors, because I'm sure there are some. We actually have another one with us tonight. I'm very excited. We'll introduce you in just a second. Or you can wave. Yeah. Okay. Morgan is joining us. But is there, if you could give them one piece of like advice, just about their daughter or their son that's fighting CDH or that has CDH, their CDH survivor, what would it be?
Keep the faith. Don't give up.
Yeah, that makes me really happy just to hear your story. I have like I said, I have a daughter, and I know that one of the things that I think about is what how people can be mean, right? They can be cruel. They can,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. And she was on ECMO, so she has the scar. And it's, I mean, it's faded. She's, thank goodness she's never re-herniated. But I mean, she's 5 now, so there's always a chance of something. But I always wonder what is life gonna look like? Will she, I mean, she runs everywhere and now. She has, her speeds are fast and faster. But I'm like, what is life gonna be like? So I know for me personally, just hearing from you just means the world.